She was invisible to the Boston Mafia king for an entire year until another man made her laugh. Have you ever loved someone who passed you every day, trusted your work depended on your presence, and still never truly saw you? On the 43rd floor of a glass tower above Boston Harbor, Lila Monroe sat behind the same polished desk each morning, quietly holding Sebastian Rourke's empire together. Outside, snow pressed against the windows. Inside, powerful men lowered their voices whenever he entered the room. Then, a security officer brought Lila coffee, leaned close, and made her smile. Sebastian heard that laugh through his closed office door. What happened next was not simply jealousy. It was the moment a dangerous man realized the woman he had kept at a distance had already become his greatest weakness. Stay until the end, like the video, and comment where you are watching from. That laugh stayed in the room after Lila stopped making it. For a few seconds, she could still feel the warmth of it in her chest, the small surprise of having forgotten where she was. Ethan stood on the other side of her desk with one hand wrapped around his coffee, smiling as though the morning belonged to ordinary people and ordinary things. Then Sebastian Rourke opened his office door. The entire floor changed, conversations lowered, keyboards softened. A woman near the conference room froze with a file pressed against her ribs. Even Ethan straightened, though he did not step away from Lila. Sebastian did not look at anyone else. His eyes found her, held her, and stripped the room of everything that had existed a moment before. Lila had spent almost a year imagining what it might feel like if he ever truly looked at her. In those private fantasies, the moment had been quiet, tender, perhaps, something that would allow her to breathe. This did not. This felt like being discovered. Life had taught Lila Monroe how to disappear without leaving a room. At 25, she kept her clothes simple, her voice calm, and her private feelings hidden behind a smile that rarely reached the office. Every morning she arrived at Rourke Atlantic Tower before 7:30. Boston Harbor was usually still dark, and winter turned the water beyond the glass into black metal. The guards knew her by name. The executives knew only that the day ran more smoothly when she was there. Her desk sat outside Sebastian's office, close enough for her to hear the quiet movements of his life. The sound of a file closing, the low murmur of a phone call in Italian, the measured pace of his steps when a meeting had gone badly, the silence that followed when someone entered his office with confidence and left without it. Lila managed everything that touched his schedule. She moved legal calls before they became conflicts. She caught errors in shipping contracts before they reached his desk. She remembered which councilman hated early meetings, which investor needed reassurance before bad news, and which senior executive lied whenever he used the phrase to be perfectly honest. Sebastian rarely thanked her. He rarely looked at her. Most mornings, Grant Maddox stepped from the private elevator first, followed by Sebastian in a dark suit. Lila always rose to greet him. Sometimes he nodded. Often he passed without answering, leaving her to sit down and pretend the old ache did not matter. Lila's life outside the tower was smaller and less polished. She rented a third-floor apartment in Dorchester above a bakery that began working before dawn. By 4 in the morning, the hallway smelled of yeast and sugar. By 6, delivery trucks rattled the windows. The radiator knocked in winter, the kitchen light flickered when the microwave ran, and the bathroom door only closed if she lifted it slightly by the handle. She loved the apartment because it was hers. On one wall, she kept a photograph of her mother laughing beside a lake in Worcester taken before the hospital visits and the careful questions about pain. Lila sent money home twice a month. She never mentioned that the amount sometimes left her eating noodles for 3 nights in a row. After work, she studied corporate management online while the bakery's mixer vibrated through the floor. She wanted to move into operations because she understood systems and could see pressure building before other people noticed the cracks. No one at Rourke Atlantic knew that. To them, she was the quiet woman outside Sebastian's door. Sebastian himself knew more than he ever admitted. 6 months earlier, on a night when snow had shut down half the city, Lila stayed late to prepare briefing materials for an emergency board meeting. Most of the executive floor had emptied by 9. She was crossing the lobby with a stack of binders when Henry Walsh, a maintenance supervisor in his 60s, collapsed near the service elevators. The sound of his body hitting the marble echoed across the open space. A pair of executives stopped, stared, and then began talking about calling security. One of them kept glancing toward the entrance, worried that his car might leave without him. Lila dropped the binders and ran. "Henry." He did not answer. She knelt beside him, hands shaking as she searched for a pulse. Then another figure appeared beside her. Sebastian removed his coat and placed it beneath Henry's head. His voice became calm, low, impossible to disobey. "Lila, call emergency services." It was the first time he had used her name. She looked at him startled. His eyes met hers for one brief second. "Now." She made the call. Sebastian stayed on the floor beside Henry until the paramedics arrived. He kept one hand on the older man's shoulder and spoke to him with a steadiness that made Panic seem embarrassed to remain in the room. When Henry's wife arrived at the hospital, she discovered that the surgery hotel transportation and missed wages had all been covered. No company account showed the payment. No announcement followed. A week later, Lila overheard Grant speaking to Sebastian behind a half-closed conference room door. "Henry wants to thank you. He does not know it was me. He figured it out. Then tell him he is wrong." Grant was silent for a moment. "Why hide it?" Sebastian's answer came quietly. "Gratitude creates debt. He has enough to carry." Lila stood outside the room with a folder held against her chest. Something inside her shifted. Until then, she had admired Sebastian's discipline, his intelligence, and the way powerful men became careful around him. That night, she saw the kindness he kept hidden, because he did not want it used, praised, or owed. It was not the kind of kindness people performed for applause. It was private, almost reluctant. That was when admiration became something more dangerous. After that, Lila noticed every contradiction. Sebastian frightened people but never enjoyed their fear. He remembered drivers and cleaners by name, never flirted with women who leaned too close, and never allowed anyone to humiliate a person who could not safely answer back. There were harder things, too. Calls ended when she approached. Men arrived through private elevators after midnight. Freight contracts carried attention money alone could not explain. In break rooms, people whispered about Boston Harbor and a man named Declan Voss. Lila learned where not to listen. She also learned that Sebastian's public life and private life were separated by little more than a closed door. Rourke Atlantic Group owned shipping terminals, commercial buildings, security firms, and logistics companies across Massachusetts. Newspapers showed Sebastian beside mayors and business leaders, but Boston carried quieter stories about his father, old Irish crews in tailored suits, and men who lost everything after challenging the Rourke organization. Lila never asked whether they were true. Sebastian's eyes had already answered. What she did not know was that he had noticed her long before the morning Ethan made her laugh. He knew she arrived early, skipped lunch when her mother had appointments, touched her locket when worried, and preferred the brass lamp because the ceiling lights gave her headaches. He even knew she drank vanilla lattes with extra cinnamon. He had simply never been the man who brought her one. On the night of her mother's surgery, Lila had planned to work until noon and then take a train to Worcester. At 8:15, the entire executive schedule was suddenly cleared. A car waited downstairs. The driver already had the hospital address. When Lila asked Grant who had arranged it, he said only, "The office." 2 months later, a senior vice president shouted at her in front of 3 employees after she refused to falsify a meeting record. Sebastian walked past during the argument without stopping. The following week, the vice president was transferred to a regional office in Maine. When Lila left the tower without gloves during the first snow of December, a black box appeared at reception the next morning. Inside was a pair of soft leather gloves in her exact size. There was no card. She assumed they were part of a company holiday gift program. Grant knew better. One evening, after Lila had gone home, he entered Sebastian's office and found him standing beside the glass looking at the empty desk outside. "How long are you planning to pretend you don't know her name?" Grant asked. Sebastian did not turn. "As long as necessary." "Necessary for whom?" Sebastian's reflection remained still in the window. "For her." Grant understood the logic even if he did not believe it would hold. Sebastian's world punished attachment. His father had taught him that before he was old enough to question it. Love created patterns. Patterns created access. Access became leverage. Sebastian kept no photographs on his desk. He attended public events alone. He never allowed the same woman to be seen beside him twice. He believed distance could make a person invisible to his enemies. Then Declan Voss began pressing against the edges of his empire. Voss controlled warehouses south of the city and several freight companies that moved goods through New England. He wanted access to the harbor routes Sebastian had spent years securing. At first, the pressure looked legitimate. Delayed permits, union complaints, inspections that appeared without warning. Then a contractor was found beaten behind a restaurant in South Boston. A city official withdrew from a development agreement after his daughter received photographs of her children leaving school. Sebastian responded quietly. 2 of Voss's shell companies lost their financing within a week. A trucking contract vanished. A judge who owed Voss a favor suddenly discovered a reason to retire. The conflict remained hidden beneath paperwork and polite meetings, but men on both sides understood what was happening. One night, Grant placed a file on Sebastian's desk. "Voss has stopped pushing the business." Sebastian opened the file. "What is he looking for?" "Something personal." "He will not find anything." Grant's eyes moved toward the glass wall. Lila was outside gathering her coat. Sebastian followed the glance. For 1 second, his expression changed. Then it closed. "Nothing," he repeated. That was the lie he had lived with until the morning Ethan Cole brought her coffee. After Sebastian dismissed her from his office, Lila returned to her desk and stared at the same email for almost 5 minutes. She could still hear his voice. "I knew you existed. Looking at you properly would have been a mistake. Now I cannot stop." The words followed her through the day. Every time Sebastian's door opened, her body reacted before her mind could stop it. She felt his presence when he crossed the corridor. She felt his attention when he paused near her desk to ask about a meeting he could have checked himself. At 4:30, Sebastian paused beside her desk and moved a legal meeting to 11. His gaze dropped to Ethan's empty coffee cup before he walked away. Grant followed with a look that suggested he understood far more than Lila did. She left the tower after dark. Snow had begun falling over Boston, fine and dry, catching in the streetlights. Cars hissed through slush. Wind came off the harbor hard enough to make pedestrians lower their heads. Lila walked to the station with Sebastian's confession moving through her like a fever. At home, she set her keys on the counter and stood in the dark. The apartment felt smaller than usual. She replayed the control in his voice and the way he had said her name as if it had been waiting behind his teeth for months. She wanted to believe him. That was the most dangerous part. Lila knew enough about powerful men to understand that attention was not the same as care. Jealousy was not devotion. Possession was not love. Still, she had spent a year wishing he would see her. Now he had. Sleep came slowly. When it did, she dreamed of glass walls, winter light, and Sebastian standing on the other side of a door he had finally chosen to open. The next morning she arrived 10 minutes early. 2 women from finance stopped talking when she entered the elevator. One smiled too brightly. The other studied her phone with exaggerated concentration. Lila felt unease before the doors opened. Then she stepped onto the executive floor and stopped. Her desk was gone, not moved a few feet. Gone. The chair monitor, lamp files, and small plant her mother had given her had vanished, leaving a clean rectangle in the carpet. For one absurd second, Lila wondered whether she had entered the wrong building. The floor manager hurried toward her. "Miss Monroe." She looked at the empty space. "Where is my desk?" He lowered his voice. "Mr. Rourke reassigned your position." "To where?" The manager glanced toward Sebastian's office. Lila followed his eyes. Through the glass, she saw a second workstation inside. It stood 6 feet from Sebastian's desk. Her monitor had already been connected. Her files were stacked in perfect order. The brass lamp glowed beside her little plant. Sebastian sat behind his desk, reading a tablet as if he had not rearranged the center of her life before breakfast. The manager cleared his throat. "He asked to see you when you arrived." Of course he had. Lila walked across the floor beneath the weight of a dozen carefully hidden stairs. She knocked once. "Come in." Sebastian did not look up until the door closed behind her. Then his eyes lifted. "Good morning, Lila." Her name sounded different in the quiet room. She placed her bag beside the new desk but remained standing. "You moved my desk." "Yes." "Why?" Sebastian set the tablet down. "Because I want you in here." "That is not a professional reason." "No. People are staring." "They will recover." Lila folded her arms. "They will talk." "I know. And you do not care." His gaze held hers without apology. "I would prefer they notice." Heat rose beneath her skin, part anger, part something she did not trust. "You cannot make decisions like this without asking me." "I can. That does not mean you should." A faint change touched his expression. Not amusement exactly. Interest. He leaned back in his chair. "Then tell me what you want." The question surprised her. Lila looked at the workstation, then back at him. "I want my responsibilities recognized. If I am handling executive operations, I want the title and authority that belong to the work." Sebastian studied her for a long moment. "Draft the position." She blinked. "You're serious." "I am always serious." "That is not true." One dark eyebrow lifted. Lila almost smiled. Almost. Sebastian noticed. The room seemed to narrow. "There," he said quietly. "What?" "The smile." Her pulse shifted. "You moved my desk for a smile." "No." He rose and came around the desk. "I moved it because I spent a year telling myself that distance was discipline." He stopped a few feet away. Lila could smell cedar coffee and the cold air still clinging to his suit. "And now?" she asked. Sebastian looked at the empty space beyond the glass where her desk used to be. "Now I know distance was only another kind of cowardice." The honesty of it left her without an answer. A phone rang on his desk. Neither of them moved at first. Then Sebastian stepped back and the room released a breath. "Sit down, Lila." This time, she did. He returned to his desk and answered the call in Italian. His voice became colder, older-edged with a threat she could not translate but understood perfectly. Lila opened the first file waiting beside her keyboard. For several minutes she tried to work. Then she looked up. Sebastian was already watching her. He did not look away. Sebastian kept his eyes on Lila for 1 second longer than necessary. Then he turned back to the call, his voice shifting into the hard, precise cadence he used when speaking Italian. Lila could not understand the words, but she understood the silences between them. Someone on the other end was explaining too much. Sebastian listened without interruption, one hand resting flat against the desk. When he finally spoke, the temperature of the room seemed to drop. "No more delays?" A pause followed. Sebastian glanced toward the harbor beyond the windows. "Then replace him." He ended the call and placed the phone beside his laptop. Lila tried to focus on the file in front of her. The first page contained projected shipping costs for a new terminal contract. She read the same paragraph 3 times and retained nothing. 6 feet separated their desks. It was not enough. Outside his office, Sebastian had been a presence behind smoked glass, a voice through an intercom, a dark figure moving past her desk with his attention fixed on larger things. Inside, there was nowhere for either of them to disappear. She could see the faint line near his left wrist when his shirt cuff shifted. She noticed the shadow beneath his eyes and the way he pressed his thumb against the edge of his watch when impatient. Sebastian noticed things too. Every time she touched the gold locket at her throat, his gaze sharpened. When she frowned at a report, he stopped typing. When she pushed her coffee aside after 2 sips, he looked at the cup as if it had personally disappointed him. At 9:30, the office phone rang. Lila reached for it. Sebastian answered first. She looked at him. He looked back. "I am capable of answering my own telephone," he said. "I know." "Then why are you staring at me?" "Because you moved me in here to handle your calls." A quiet pause settled between them. Sebastian pressed the line button. "Rourke." His expression remained controlled as he listened. Then he held the receiver toward her. "It is for you." Lila accepted it without smiling. "Executive Operations. Lila Monroe speaking." A senior director from finance launched into a question about the afternoon meeting. Lila answered, moved 2 appointments, and solved a conflict that would have delayed the entire acquisition review. When she ended the call, Sebastian was still watching. "What?" "You changed the order of the presentations. Finance needs the legal projections before they can approve the revised numbers. No one told you that." "They did not have to." Sebastian leaned back. "Why are you still an assistant?" The question landed harder than his tone suggested. Lila set the receiver down. "Because the men making promotion decisions do not ask women like me what we can do. They ask how useful we are where they put us." Something dark moved behind his eyes. "Names." She almost laughed. "I am not giving you a list of people to terrify." "I did not say I would terrify them." "You did not have to." His mouth shifted slightly. Lila opened the next document. "You told me to draft the position I want. Have you started?" "I arrived 15 minutes ago." That was not an answer. She looked up. "No, I have not started." "Why?" "Because I am currently reorganizing your entire afternoon." Sebastian reached for his tablet. "Your afternoon." Lila went still. He continued reading. "The operations position is yours to define. The authority will belong to you, not to me. Nothing in this building belongs to anyone without your permission." His eyes lifted from the screen. "That is not the same as ownership." "Is that how you see people?" The question was sharper than she intended. Sebastian placed the tablet down with deliberate care. "No." Lila held his gaze. He did not explain. A knock sounded at the door. Before Lila could answer, a junior analyst stepped inside, carrying 3 folders. He stopped when he saw her workstation. His eyes moved from Lila to Sebastian, then back again. "Mr. Rourke, legal asked me to deliver these." Sebastian did not look away from Lila. "Leave them with Miss Monroe." The analyst hesitated. "All 3. Did I become unclear?" "No, sir." He crossed the room quickly and placed the folders on Lila's desk. "Thank you," she said. The analyst nodded and left. The door had barely closed before Lila spoke. "You did that on purpose?" "Yes." "You want everyone to know?" "Yes." "Why?" Sebastian returned to the document in front of him. "Because ambiguity encourages speculation. This will create more speculation." "Only until they understand the arrangement." Lila stared at him. "What arrangement?" Sebastian turned a page. "You work directly with me." "I did that yesterday." "Yesterday you were outside." The way he said it made the word sound personal. Lila looked through the glass wall at the empty rectangle where her old desk had stood. "That distance mattered to you." "It did. And now it does not." Sebastian's fingers stopped against the paper. "It matters more." Before she could ask what he meant, the private elevator opened beyond the glass. Grant stepped onto the floor carrying a black folder. A second man followed him. The stranger was broad through the shoulders with silver at his temples and a coat too expensive for the weather. He carried himself like a person accustomed to entering rooms where other men waited. Sebastian rose. Lila felt the shift immediately. The warmth that had appeared in him vanished. His face became unreadable. Grant opened the office door. "Marco Bell is here." The stranger looked at Lila. His gaze rested on her for only a moment, but it was long enough to feel like an assessment. Sebastian stepped between them. "Conference room." Marco's attention returned to him. "I thought we were meeting privately." "We are." His eyes moved toward Lila again. Sebastian's voice sharpened. "The conference room." Marco smiled without humor. "As you wish." The three men disappeared through the side door that connected Sebastian's office to a private meeting room. Lila remained at her desk. The door closed, but the glass walls offered a partial view. Marco sat at the end of the table. Grant remained standing. Sebastian took the chair opposite him and did not remove his jacket. The conversation began calmly. Within 5 minutes, Marco leaned forward and struck the table with one hand. Sebastian did not move. Lila watched his stillness become a weapon. Marco spoke again, faster this time. Sebastian answered with a single sentence. The older man leaned back. The entire meeting changed. Lila could not hear the words, but she recognized the moment control moved from one side of the table to the other. 20 minutes later, Marco left without looking at her. Grant stayed behind. He entered Sebastian's office and closed the conference room door. "Bell will cooperate," Grant said. "He will pretend to. He knows the cost of lying." Sebastian looked toward Lila. She lowered her eyes to the file, but too late. Grant noticed. A faint trace of amusement touched his face. "Morning, Miss Monroe." "Good morning, Mr. Maddox." Sebastian opened another folder. "Lila?" Grant's eyebrows lifted. Sebastian did not look up. "Her name is Lila." The room went quiet. Grant glanced toward her. Lila felt heat rise into her face. "Good morning, Lila." She managed a nod. "Good morning." Grant placed the black folder on Sebastian's desk. "Security review for the harbor meeting." Sebastian opened it. Lila saw photographs clipped to the first page. Trucks, warehouses, men in dark coats. Grant lowered his voice. "Voss has added people near the eastern terminal. How many? 8 that we can confirm." Sebastian turned a photograph. "Confirm the others." Grant's eyes shifted toward Lila. Sebastian noticed. "She stays." Lila looked up. Grant studied his face. "This is not corporate business." "No." "She does not have clearance." Sebastian's voice became quiet. "She has mine." The words settled into the room with more weight than they should have. Grant gave one slow nod. "Understood." Lila did not understand. Not entirely. Grant continued. Someone contacted 2 of our independent drivers, offered cash for route information. Did they accept? One did, and the other called us. Sebastian closed the folder. Reward him. And the one who accepted, remove his access. Grant waited. Sebastian's expression did not change. Nothing else, not unless he lies again. Grant collected the folder. As he turned to leave, he paused beside Lila's desk. Careful in here. She looked up. With the files. His eyes moved towards Sebastian. With everything. Sebastian's voice came from across the room. Grant. Grant left without another word. Lila watched the door close. What did he mean? He enjoys being dramatic. I do not think he does. Sebastian returned to his work. Lila looked toward the black folder. Who is Declan Voss? His gaze lifted slowly. You have heard the name. I have heard people stop speaking after they say it. That should tell you enough. It tells me people are afraid. They should be. Are you? Sebastian's expression did not change, but something in the room did. No. She believed him. That frightened her more than if he had lied. At 11:15, Lila finished reviewing the acquisition packet and found 3 errors in the financial projections. She marked them, sent the corrections to finance, and began drafting the description for the position Sebastian had told her to create. Director of Strategic Operations. She typed the title, stared at it, then deleted the words. Sebastian looked up. Why did you erase it? Lila froze. You can see my screen. I can see your face. She leaned back. The title sounds too ambitious. For whom? For someone who was sitting outside your door yesterday. Sebastian's attention settled fully on her. You identified a $7 million discrepancy in the Harbor Point proposal last quarter. Anyone could have found it. No one else did. You remember that? I remember everything you correct before it reaches me. Lila looked at him. For a year, she had believed her work disappeared into the system as quietly as she did. Sebastian continued. You stopped legal from sending an unsigned agreement to the governor's office. You caught the false insurance certificate in the White Street contract. You reorganized the North Atlantic schedule after an executive who earns 4 times your salary failed to notice 2 ships were assigned to the same berth. Lila's throat tightened. You knew. I knew. Then why did you never say anything? His eyes held hers. Because every time I allowed myself to notice one thing about you, I noticed 10 more. The office seemed smaller. Lila touched the edge of her keyboard. That does not explain why you ignored me. It explains it perfectly. No, it explains why you were afraid. Sebastian became very still. She expected anger. Instead, he gave the smallest nod. Yes. The honesty unsettled her more than resistance would have. A knock interrupted them. Ethan stood in the doorway holding a security tablet. His expression changed when he saw Lila. Well, he said, that is new. Lila felt Sebastian's attention sharpen. Ethan stepped inside. I need a signature for the camera upgrade. Sebastian held out his hand. Ethan did not move. The request is assigned to Executive Operations. Lila rose and accepted the tablet. Their fingers did not touch, but Sebastian watched as if they had. Ethan lowered his voice. You okay? Lila glanced toward Sebastian. His face revealed nothing. She looked back at Ethan. I'm fine. You disappeared from the hall. My desk moved. I noticed. Ethan gave her a small smile. It was a good desk. It had character. It had coffee nearby. Lila smiled, despite herself. Sebastian spoke. Mr. Cole? Ethan looked at him. Yes, sir. Do you require anything else? The question was polite. The warning was not. Ethan straightened. No. He looked at Lila one last time. You know where to find me. Sebastian waited until the door closed. Then he said, He is interested in you. Lila returned to her chair. That is possible. It is obvious. Not everyone hides their feelings for a year. His gaze darkened. Do you encourage him? She stared. That is none of your business. It became my business yesterday. No, you decided it did. Sebastian rose. He moved around the desk, slowly stopping near the edge of hers. Does he make you happy? The question held none of his earlier arrogance. Lila looked up. Ethan is kind. That was not the question. He notices people. A muscle shifted in Sebastian's jaw. He noticed you. Yes. And you liked that. I spent a long time being invisible. His expression changed. For 1 second, regret showed clearly. Then he hid it. Lila continued. You do not get to punish him for seeing what you refuse to look at. I am not punishing him. You had Grant remove him from the floor. That was restraint. She almost laughed. Sebastian's eyes narrowed. You find that amusing. I find you impossible. The corner of his mouth moved. Lila stared. It was not a full smile, but it changed his face enough to make her forget what she planned to say. Sebastian noticed her reaction. What? Nothing. You were staring. So were you yesterday. A silence opened between them. Then he said, Yes. The word moved through her like heat. I was. At noon, lunch arrived on a silver cart. Lila expected to eat at her desk. Sebastian carried 2 plates to the small table near the windows. Sit. That sounded like an order. It was an invitation delivered efficiently. She gave him a look. He pulled out the chair opposite his. Lila sat. Below them, Boston Harbor stretched beneath a low gray sky. Ferries crossed the dark water. Snow clung to the rooftops near the waterfront and melted in thin lines along the glass. For several minutes they ate in silence. Lila could feel his attention even when he looked at his plate. She set down her fork. How many people are talking about this? All of them. You sound pleased. I am not displeased. That is not the same thing. No. She studied him. Why do you want them to notice? Sebastian lifted his water glass. Because I spent a year pretending you were not important. Lila went still. He set the glass down. That was my mistake. You thought ignoring me kept me safe. Yes. And now you are placing me inside your office where everyone can see. His gaze moved toward the harbor. I have been reconsidering my methods. Because Ethan made me laugh. Sebastian's mouth tightened. Do not say his name while we are eating. Lila stared at him. Then a laugh escaped her. It was smaller than the one from the previous morning, but real. Sebastian watched her with an intensity that made the sound fade. What? He leaned back. Nothing. That is not true. No. His eyes stayed on her face. It is simply the first time you have laughed because of me. Her heartbeat shifted. You were jealous. I am still jealous. The directness took away her prepared response. Sebastian continued. I dislike that he knows how you take your coffee. You could have asked. I should have. I would have answered. I know. Lila looked at him across the table. The powerful man everyone feared sat with his hands folded near his plate, admitting small failures as if they cost him more than public defeats. She spoke quietly. I have been trying not to love you for almost a year. Sebastian did not move. The city continued beyond the glass, but inside the office every sound seemed to stop. Lila wished she could take the words back. His voice lowered. "Say that again." She looked down. "I should not have said it. Lila." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "I said, I have been trying not to love you." Sebastian stood. The chair moved against the floor with a soft scrape. Lila rose too, though she was not sure why. He crossed the distance between them. There was no hurry in him. That made every step feel deliberate. He stopped close enough for her to feel his warmth. Since when? Since Henry collapsed in the lobby. Recognition passed through his face. "You were there. You said my name. I remember. You paid for his surgery." Sebastian's gaze sharpened. "Who told you?" "No one. I heard you speaking to Grant." He looked away briefly, almost irritated that the secret had survived without his permission. Lila continued. "That was the first time I saw who you were when no one important was watching." His eyes returned to hers. "You believe that was who I am. I believe it was part of you. You do not know the other parts. I know enough to be afraid of them." His expression hardened. "Then you should stay afraid." "I did not say fear changed how I feel." Sebastian inhaled slowly. His hand lifted toward her face, then stopped. The hesitation surprised her. "Tell me to step away," he said. Lila looked at him. This was the man who moved executives with one sentence, who changed her desk without asking, who seemed to believe the world existed to be arranged. Yet he waited. She closed the remaining distance herself. Her fingers curled around his tie. Sebastian's control broke. His hand settled against her jaw, careful for only a second before his mouth found hers. The kiss was not gentle. It carried a year of silence, denial, and anger at all the time they had wasted. Lila gripped the front of his shirt as the room tilted beneath her. Sebastian's other hand moved to her waist and held her against him with a force that left no doubt about how carefully he had been restraining himself. She kissed him back with the same hunger. Every private thought she had hidden inside train rides, late nights, and mornings outside his door became real in the pressure of his mouth. When he pulled back, both of them were breathing too hard. His forehead rested briefly against hers. "Lila." The sound of her name was rough. She closed her eyes. "This changes everything." It already has. A knock struck the office door. Sebastian stepped away at once. The transformation was immediate. His breathing steadied. His shoulders straightened. By the time he said, "Come in," the feared head of Rourke Atlantic had returned. Grant entered carrying a white envelope. One look at his face erased the warmth from the room. Sebastian saw it too. "What happened?" Grant closed the door behind him. "This was left inside the executive garage." He placed the envelope on the desk. There was no name on the front, no return address. Sebastian opened it. A photograph slid into his hand. For 1 second, he did not react. Then his face became completely empty. Lila stepped closer. "What is it?" Sebastian turned the photograph over before she could see. "Grant, clear the floor." Lila looked between them. "Sebastian." "Not now." Her fear sharpened into anger. "You do not get to shut me out after everything you just said." His eyes met hers. Something in them made her pulse stumble. Lila reached for the photograph. Sebastian caught her wrist, not hard, but fast. She held his gaze. "Let me see." He released her. Lila took the photograph. It showed her leaving her apartment the previous night. The image had been taken from across the street. Snow caught in her hair. One hand held her coat closed at the throat. The bakery sign glowed behind her. The photograph was close enough to reveal her face clearly, close enough to prove the person watching knew exactly where she lived. Lila turned it over. 4 words had been written on the back. Pretty woman. Careful man. Cold moved through her body. Grant placed another sheet of paper beside the photograph. A second message had been printed beneath the image. Give Voss the harbor, or we take the girl. Sebastian looked at Lila. The man who feared nothing had fear in his eyes. The fear in Sebastian's eyes vanished almost as soon as Lila saw it. His face closed. His shoulders settled. The man standing in front of her became precise again, controlled enough to make panic feel like an indulgence. He took the photograph from her hand and placed it face down on the desk. Grant locked the executive floor. Grant reached for his phone. No one leaves until every access record is reviewed. Lila stared at Sebastian. You think the person who left that envelope is still here? I think someone entered a secured garage using credentials they should not have had. Grant was already issuing orders. Sebastian turned toward the windows. Boston Harbor stretched beneath the gray afternoon cold and distant. Ferries moved between the piers as if nothing had changed. Behind him, Lila read the message again. Give Voss the harbor, or we take the girl. The girl. Not Lila Monroe. Not an employee. Not a person with a mother waiting for her Sunday call and bills folded beneath a magnet on her refrigerator. A bargaining piece. She placed both hands against the edge of the desk to steady herself. How long have they been watching me? Sebastian looked at her. I do not know. That picture was taken last night. Yes. They knew where I lived before you moved my desk. His jaw tightened. Possibly. Then this is not only about what happened yesterday. No. She heard the answer beneath the answer. Someone had been searching before Sebastian allowed himself to look at her openly. Grant ended the call. The floor is secure. Security is pulling the garage footage. Pull the previous 30 days, Sebastian said. Every entrance, every vendor, every delivery. Grant nodded. Lila looked between them. What does Voss want from the harbor? Sebastian did not answer. She felt anger rise through the fear. You told me that I had your clearance. This is different. Because now I am the subject of the file. Because now the file can get you killed. His voice sharpened on the final word. The office went silent. Lila forced herself not to look away. You do not get to decide that I am strong enough to work beside you, but too fragile to understand why someone photographed my home. Sebastian stepped closer. This is not about strength. Then what is it about? Keeping you alive. By keeping me ignorant. By keeping you away from men who think a woman is easier to break than a business. The words landed coldly. Lila looked at the photograph on the desk. Do they? Sebastian's expression changed. Do they what? Think I am easier to break? No. His answer came without hesitation. They think I am. Grant looked toward the glass wall. The employees beyond it were being quietly directed away from the executive floor. No one moved quickly. No alarm sounded. The efficiency made the danger feel more real. Sebastian turned to Grant. Bring the car to the private entrance. Lila looked at him. What car? You are leaving. Where am I going? With me. No. The words stopped both men. Sebastian faced her fully. This is not negotiable. Then you are going to have a difficult afternoon. Lila, I am not walking out of my office and disappearing because you ordered it. His gaze hardened. Your apartment is compromised. I understand that. They know your address. I understand that too. They may know your mother's address. The blood left her face. Sebastian watched the impact and regretted the words the moment they landed. She saw it, though he did not apologize. Lila reached for her phone. "I need to call her. Grant has already sent people." She froze. "You sent people to my mother. 2 agents are outside her home. She has not been approached. You did that without asking me." "There was no time. There is always time to tell me what is happening to my family." Sebastian's voice lowered. "If Voss knows about you, I assume he knows everything connected to you." Lila tightened her grip on the phone. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing yet." "Good." She looked at Grant. "Do not speak to her until I do." Grant glanced at Sebastian. Lila followed the look. "No, do not look at him. I am asking you." Grant gave a measured nod. "Understood." Sebastian said nothing. Lila called her mother. The conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. She lied carefully. She said the company had received a threat connected to a contract dispute. She said security was being increased for several employees and their families. She said there was no immediate danger. Her mother asked whether Lila was frightened. Lila looked at Sebastian. He stood beside the desk, watching her as if every breath she took mattered. "A little," she said. Her mother became quiet. "Then do not pretend you are not." Lila closed her eyes. "I will call you tonight. You promise?" "I promise." When the call ended, the office felt different, more personal, more dangerous. Sebastian picked up the photograph and slid it back into the envelope. "You are staying at my home." Lila let out a slow breath. "That sounds less like an invitation every time you say it. It is the safest location in the city. According to you. According to the men who have failed to enter it." Grant cleared his throat. "That sentence may be less reassuring than you intended." Sebastian ignored him. Lila looked at the empty space beyond the glass where her desk used to be. This morning, moving 6 feet had felt impossible. Now she was being asked to leave her home and step entirely into Sebastian's world. "If I go," she said, "there are conditions." Sebastian's eyes narrowed. "You are giving me conditions?" "Yes." Grant looked down, but not before Lila saw the faintest trace of amusement. Sebastian folded his arms. "Go on. You do not answer my phone. I have no interest in your phone. You looked ready to take it from me when I called my mother. I was ready to make the call for you. That is worse." His mouth tightened. Lila continued, "You do not decide what I know about threats involving me. You do not make decisions about my job without speaking to me. You do not send people into my apartment unless I am present or I give permission." Sebastian remained still. "And if I say no?" "Then I call the police and explain that my employer is trying to relocate me against my will." Grant looked toward the ceiling. Sebastian's eyes stayed on hers. "You would not." "I would." A long silence followed. Then he said, "You do not leave the residence without security." "Agreed." "You do not contact anyone about the threat without clearing it through Grant." "I will tell him before I make contact. I will not ask permission." Sebastian's jaw shifted. Lila held his gaze. "Agreed," he said. She blinked. The concession surprised her more than resistance would have. Sebastian stepped close enough to lower his voice. "You are not safe because I agree with your conditions. I know. You are not in control because I allow you to ask questions. I know that too." His gaze moved over her face. "Then what are you doing? Making sure fear does not turn me into furniture in someone else's house." For 1 second, something almost tender moved through his expression. Then Grant opened the office door. "The car is ready." The private elevator carried them beneath the tower. Lila stood between Sebastian and Grant while floors passed in glowing numbers above the door. No one spoke. At the garage level, 4 men waited near a black vehicle. Another car idled behind it. The air smelled of concrete cold exhaust and melting snow. Sebastian placed one hand lightly against Lila's back as they crossed the garage. She should have objected. Instead, she let the warmth remain. Grant opened the rear door. Lila slid inside. Sebastian followed. The door closed with a heavy sound that separated them from the world outside. For several blocks, Boston moved past in winter fragments. Brick buildings darkened by snow. People leaning into the wind. A bus dragging light through wet streets. The harbor appearing between towers like a sheet of steel. Lila watched the city and thought about her apartment. Her mother's photograph on the wall, the management textbook open beside her bed, the mug in the sink, ordinary things that had felt permanent that morning. Sebastian sat beside her, one arm resting near the window. "You are angry." Lila did not look at him. "I am trying to decide which part deserves the most attention. Begin with the photograph. That is fear. And the rest?" She turned. "The rest is you." He accepted that without visible reaction. "You believe I am controlling you. You moved my desk, removed Ethan from the floor, sent guards to my mother, and arranged where I will sleep. When you say it like that, it sounds excessive. It is excessive. It is also effective." She stared at him. "Do you ever hear yourself?" "Constantly." That almost made her smile. Sebastian saw it. His gaze softened. Then it dropped to her hands. Lila had twisted her fingers together in her lap. He covered them with one of his. The touch was quiet. No demand, no force, just warmth. "You can be angry at me," he said. "You can hate every decision I make today." His thumb moved once across her knuckles. "But you will be alive tomorrow." Lila looked at their joined hands. "I do not hate you." Something changed in his face. She felt it before she saw it. "That would be easier," he said. "For whom?" "Both of us." The car turned onto a narrow Beacon Hill street lined with old brick homes and bare trees. Snow gathered along iron railings. Gas lamps glowed beneath the afternoon sky. The residents stood behind a dark green door with no visible sign of security. 2 cameras were hidden beneath the stone trim. A man reading a newspaper across the street touched his collar as the convoy arrived. Lila noticed. Sebastian did too. Inside the house opened into warmth and shadow. Dark wood floors stretched beneath soft amber lamps. Paintings hung against deep green walls. A curved staircase rose toward the 2nd floor. Beyond the living room, tall windows overlooked a private courtyard buried beneath snow. It did not feel like the home of a criminal king. It felt like a place built for silence. A woman in her late 50s entered from the hallway. Her silver-streaked hair was arranged in a smooth twist. She wore black trousers and a cream blouse, simple and elegant. "Mr. Rourke." "Nora." Her attention moved to Lila. No surprise appeared in her expression, but Lila sensed a quick recalculation. "This is Lila Monroe," Sebastian said. "She will be staying here." Nora offered her hand. "Welcome, Miss Monroe." "Lila, please." "Lila." Sebastian removed his coat. "Prepare the room beside mine." Nora looked at him for half a second. "Of course." Lila turned. "The room beside yours. It has the strongest interior lock. Convenient." "It is." Nora hid whatever she thought with admirable skill. "I will show you upstairs." The guest room was larger than Lila's apartment. Cream walls reflected the winter light. A fireplace stood across from the bed. The windows overlooked the courtyard. Fresh clothes had been placed on a bench, each item in her size. Her overnight bag rested beside the wardrobe. Lila stopped. "How did that get here?" Nora followed her gaze. "Mr. Maddox sent a woman from the security staff to your apartment." Lila turned sharply. Sebastian stood in his doorway. "You agreed no one would enter without me." "I agreed after the bag was collected." "That is dishonest." It is precise. It is infuriating. I know. Nora stepped toward the hall. I will have tea sent up. Lila looked at the clothes. These are not mine. The store sent several options, Nora said. Mr. Rourke dislikes delay. Mr. Rourke needs to learn disappointment. Nora's mouth almost moved. I have worked here for 12 years. I wish you luck. She left. Sebastian remained at the door. Lila opened the bag and found her toiletries, a change of clothes, her laptop, and the management textbook from beside her bed. She lifted it. You told them to bring this? I told them to bring anything near your bed or desk. He had noticed the book. Another detail stored behind all that silence. Lila set it down. How much do you know about me? Sebastian leaned against the doorframe. Enough. That is not an answer. No, she waited. He looked toward the courtyard. I know you send money to your mother twice a month. Lila's expression changed. I know you take online classes on Tuesday and Thursday nights. I know you have been offered 2 positions at other companies and declined both. I know you pretend the brass lamp is about preference when the ceiling lights cause headaches. Her throat tightened. You knew all of that, and still walked past me. Yes. Why? Sebastian's eyes returned to hers. Because knowing was dangerous enough. The room went quiet. Lila wanted to stay angry. It was difficult when he looked at her as if the truth cost him something. She placed the book on the table. I need to understand Voss. Sebastian straightened. Not tonight. That was not one of the conditions. It should have been. Sebastian. He looked toward the hallway, then back at her. Come downstairs. Grant had turned the library into an operations room. The long central table held security reports, building maps, access logs, photographs, and 2 laptop computers. Men moved in and out quietly. Every person stopped speaking when Lila entered. Sebastian noticed. Continue. The room returned to motion. Grant stood beside a screen displaying garage access records. We found the credential used to enter the tower. He enlarged a line of data. Vendor account, registered to Eastline Mechanical. Lila stepped closer. That company does not service the executive garage. Grant looked at her. You are certain? They submitted a maintenance proposal last spring. It was rejected because they lacked the required insurance. Sebastian's gaze sharpened. Who reviewed it? I did. Lila reached for the keyboard. Grant hesitated. Sebastian nodded. She opened the archived vendor database. The account number began with 9. Lila frowned. This code should not exist. Why? Grant asked. All temporary vendor codes beginning with 9 were retired 8 months ago. We moved to rotating credentials after the data audit. Grant leaned closer. This one was created 3 weeks ago. Then, someone restored an old access category because it attracts less attention in archived reports. Sebastian watched her. Who can do that? Corporate Operations Senior Security Administration and 2 executive directors. Grant opened another file. Names. Lila read the list. Her finger stopped. Miles Keene. Sebastian's expression became still. Miles was Senior Director of Logistics Operations. He had worked at Rourke Atlantic for 9 years. He attended private meetings, reviewed shipping routes, and had access to employee files during emergency planning. Grant opened Miles's financial records. 3 months ago, Keene owed $200,000 to an offshore gambling service. The debt disappeared last week. Where did the payment come from? Sebastian asked. We are tracing it. Lila studied the access log. Do not take him yet. Both men looked at her. Sebastian's voice lowered. Explain. If Miles created the code, he expects it to work. If you remove him now, Voss knows we found the breach. Grant nodded slowly. She is right. Sebastian looked at him. Grant did not apologize. Lila opened the executive calendar. We give Miles something worth passing along. What? Sebastian asked. A meeting. She searched the next day's schedule. Put a harbor negotiation here, make it private, show limited security and a departure from the residence. Sebastian studied her. You want to use me as bait. You use everyone else. Grant turned away to hide a smile. Sebastian ignored him. And while I am at this false meeting, we watch who follows you. We track who accesses the schedule. We confirm the leak before we act. His gaze remained on her. You have done this before. No. You sound comfortable. I'm not comfortable. Lila looked around the room. I am paying attention. For the first time since the photograph arrived, Sebastian looked almost proud. The plan took shape over the next 2 hours. A false harbor meeting was entered into a restricted calendar. The location was an empty warehouse near the eastern terminal. Security assignments were altered to suggest that most of Sebastian's team would accompany him. Grant arranged a hidden response unit. Only 6 people knew the meeting was false. Miles Keene was not one of them. By evening, the house had become quieter. The men left the library one by one. Grant remained to monitor incoming data. Nora served dinner in the kitchen, but Lila barely ate. Sebastian took 3 calls near the window. One conversation turned sharp. Another ended in Italian. When he joined her at the island, there was blood across the knuckles of his right hand. Lila looked at it. What happened? Nothing. Your hand disagrees. He reached for his coffee. She caught his wrist. Sebastian froze. The contact was simple, but the awareness between them was not. Lila guided him toward a chair. Sit. His eyebrow lifted. You are giving orders again. Apparently that is contagious. Nora had left a medical box in the cabinet. Lila cleaned the cuts with a damp cloth. Sebastian watched her work. The skin across his knuckles had split in 2 places. Did you hit someone? Yes. Was it Miles? No. Who? A man who gave Voss your address. Lila's hand stopped. Is he alive? Sebastian looked at her. Yes. She resumed cleaning the wound. Did you want him to be? No. His honesty sent a chill through her. Lila wrapped gauze around his hand. You said affection creates access. It does. Is that why no one lives here? He glanced around the kitchen. Nora lives in the East Wing. You know what I mean. He did. For a moment, the silence between them changed. The house no longer felt like a fortress. It felt lonely. My father trusted someone once, Sebastian said. Lila waited. He loved a woman who was not my mother. She knew his routes, his meetings, the places he felt safe. His voice remained level. An enemy took her. They used her voice to bring him into an ambush. What happened? He survived, and she did not. Lila lowered her eyes to his bandaged hand. Sebastian continued. He taught me that love creates patterns. Patterns create leverage. Your father taught you fear. His gaze hardened. He taught me survival. Those are not always the same thing. The words settled heavily. Sebastian looked at her hand still resting near his. What do you believe love creates? Lila thought of her mother, of hospital rooms, of sending money home when she could barely afford dinner, of sitting outside Sebastian's office every morning and caring for a man who refused to look at her. Responsibility, she said. That sounds like another word for leverage. No. Leverage is what an enemy takes from you. Responsibility is what you choose to carry. Sebastian became very still. Lila lifted her eyes. You do not get to call me your weakness just because losing me would hurt. His voice lowered. What should I call you? Someone who matters. He raised his uninjured hand and touched her face. This time he did not pull her closer. He waited, Lila leaned into his palm. The kiss began slowly. No anger, no jealousy, no audience behind glass. Sebastian's mouth moved against hers with a tenderness that revealed more than hunger ever could. Lila felt the exhaustion in him, the fear he refused to name, and the restraint still held tightly beneath his skin. Her fingers touched the front of his shirt. His hand settled at her waist. When they separated, his forehead rested against hers. "You should sleep," he said. "So should you." "I have work." "You always have work." His mouth shifted. "That is how empires remain standing." "And lonely." The faint warmth disappeared from his expression. Lila regretted the word, but not enough to take it back. She stepped away. Her phone lit on the kitchen counter. Ethan Cole. The message appeared across the screen. "Heard rumors. Are you safe?" Sebastian saw the name. His jaw tightened. He did not touch the phone. Lila noticed. One of her conditions. She picked it up. "Ethan is worried. He is consistently worried in directions that irritate me. He was kind to me before any of this. You have mentioned that because you keep treating kindness like a challenge." Sebastian leaned against the island. "Do you trust him?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because he has never asked me to become smaller so he can feel powerful." The word struck him. Lila saw it. She typed a reply. "I am safe. I cannot explain more right now." Ethan answered almost immediately. "Call if that changes." Sebastian looked in the screen. "He should not have your private number." Lila put the phone down. "That is not your decision." "I know." The answer stopped her. Sebastian turned toward the window. "I do not like it." "You do not have to." "No." He looked back at her. "But I will learn the difference between disliking something and owning it." Lila's anger softened. Before she could answer, Grant entered. "We have activity." They returned to the library. Grant displayed the access history on the main screen. Miles had opened the false schedule 14 minutes after it was entered. 7 minutes later, a phone linked to one of Voss's known associates placed a call from the financial district. Grant pointed to another record. Keene also downloaded the resident's security summary. Sebastian's expression went cold. Lila stepped closer. "The full summary?" "No, an outdated version." "Does he know it is outdated?" Grant shook his head. Sebastian reached for his coat. "We take him now." Lila looked at the records. "No." His gaze snapped toward her. "He accessed the house. And if you take him before the false meeting, Voss knows the schedule is compromised. He knows where you sleep. Then make him believe he still has an advantage." Grant studied the screen. "We continue with the plan. Sebastian leaves visibly. We watch Keene. We track the surveillance team." Sebastian looked between them. His voice was quiet. "Lila stays here." Grant nodded. 2 guards inside, 4 outside. Nora remains with her. Lila folded her arms. "I would like to be included in decisions involving where I remain." Sebastian stepped close. "You remain here." "That is not a discussion." "No." Their eyes locked. Then his voice softened. "It is a request I am not capable of making gently." The admission disarmed her. Lila nodded once. "I will stay." At 11:30, the convoy left the residence. Sebastian stood beside the open car door, his dark coat moving in the winter wind. Lila remained inside the entrance. He looked at her for a long moment. "Lock the door behind me." "There are 6 armed people in this house." "Lock it anyway." She stepped closer. "Come back." Something passed through his expression. He touched her cheek with his bandaged hand. "I will." Then he was gone. The vehicles disappeared down the narrow street. The door closed. Lila engaged the lock. For the next hour, the house remained quiet. Nora worked in the kitchen. 2 guards monitored the lower floor. Another stood near the upstairs landing. Lila returned to the library and reviewed the access records again. Something bothered her. The false vendor code, the restored security category. Miles had not merely accessed the system, he understood it. She opened the outdated residence summary he had downloaded. A list of backup systems appeared on the final page. Generator controls, camera relays, internal locks. One section had been marked obsolete. Lila leaned closer. The original installation date matched a contract approved by Miles 4 years earlier. Her pulse quickened. She reached for the phone. The lights went out. The house fell into darkness. For 1 second, no one moved. Then the emergency lamps flickered red along the hallway. Nora entered the library. What happened? Lila looked toward the security monitor. Every camera feed had gone black. The backup generator did not start. One line appeared across the main screen. System override. Internal authorization accepted. A radio crackled near the front hall. Then silence. Lila stood. Nora upstairs. A dull impact sounded below them. One of the guards shouted. Glass shattered. Nora's face changed. They are inside. Lila grabbed her phone and pulled Nora toward the stairs. The emergency lights painted the walls in dark red. Another crash sounded from the first floor. Footsteps moved through the entrance hall. Slow, unhurried, certain. Lila pushed Nora into the room beside Sebastian's and locked the door. Get into the dressing room. What about you? Go. Nora obeyed. Lila crossed to the security panel and pressed the manual alarm. Nothing happened. A shadow appeared beneath the bedroom door. The handle turned once, then stopped. A man's voice came through the wood. Mr. Voss would like a word with Sebastian's new weakness. Lila reached for the brass lamp beside the bed. The door began to open. The door opened 3 inches. Lila swung the brass lamp with both hands. Metal struck bone. A man cursed and stumbled backward into the hall. The lamp fell from Lila's grip and shattered against the floor, plunging the room into deeper darkness. She slammed the door shut and turned the lock. The man hit it from the other side. The frame shook. Nora stood near the dressing room, one hand pressed against her mouth. Inside? Lila whispered. Nora hesitated. Now. Another blow struck the door. Lila crossed the room and helped Nora pull open the reinforced panel hidden behind the wardrobe. The dressing room beyond it was narrow-lined with cedar shelves and built around a steel interior door. Nora stepped inside. You are coming with me. Lila looked toward the bedroom door. The hinges groaned. If both of us hide, they will search until they find us. Lila! Lock this after me. She closed the steel panel before Nora could argue. A third impact split the wooden frame. The bedroom door burst inward. The man entered with blood running from his eyebrow. He was taller than Lila expected, dressed in black with a pistol held low against his thigh. His eyes found the broken lamp. Then they found her. That was a mistake. Lila backed toward the bathroom. You entered the wrong house. He smiled. No, we entered the right one. He moved toward her. Lila turned and ran. She reached the bathroom first, slammed the door, and locked it. The man hit the wood a second later. The lock would not hold. She looked around. Stone counter, glass shower, heavy ceramic soap dish. No window large enough to escape through. The man struck the door again. A crack opened near the handle. Lila grabbed the ceramic dish. The door broke inward. She threw it at his face. He raised one arm and the dish struck his shoulder. Lila moved before he recovered. She drove her knee into his stomach, slipped past him, and ran into the hall. Red emergency lights washed the upper floor. Somewhere below, a guard groaned. Another voice called from the staircase. "She is upstairs." Lila ran toward the library. The first man recovered behind her. "Stop!" She did not. A gunshot cracked through the corridor. Wood splintered beside her head. Lila ducked and kept moving. The library door stood open. She slipped inside and pulled it shut, but there was no lock. The room smelled of paper smoke and cold air leaking through a broken window. Lila crossed to the desk where Grant had left the security plans. The emergency phone showed no signal. The house network had been cut. Footsteps slowed outside the door. The man was no longer running. He knew she had nowhere to go. Lila looked at the room. Shelves covered 3 walls. A fireplace occupied the 4th. A narrow service door beside the bookcase led to the rear stairs. She remembered seeing Nora use it earlier. Lila reached for the handle. Locked. The footsteps stopped. The library door opened. The man stepped inside. Blood still marked his face. His gun was raised now. "Enough!" Lila stood beside the service door. He advanced. "You are worth more alive, but Mr. Voss did not say you had to arrive comfortable." Lila kept her eyes on him. "What does he want?" "He wants Sebastian to understand the cost of saying no." "He already understands." The man smiled. "Not yet." He came closer. Lila glanced toward the desk. The heavy letter opener lay beside a stack of envelopes. The man followed her eyes. "Do not." She lifted both hands slowly. "You need me alive. I need you breathing." He reached for her. Lila grabbed the letter opener and drove it into his thigh. The man screamed, his gun fired into the ceiling. Lila twisted the metal deeper and shoved him backward. He struck the desk. She ran through the open library door. Another intruder appeared near the staircase. He caught her by the arm before she could turn. Lila drove her elbow into his throat. His grip loosened for half a second. She tore free, but he grabbed the back of her sweater and dragged her against him. A forearm locked across her chest. "Easy." Lila kicked backward, striking his shin. He cursed and tightened his hold. The injured man emerged from the library with blood soaking his trousers. "She stabbed me." The second intruder laughed once. "Then perhaps you should stop letting office girls embarrass you." Lila forced herself to breathe. The second man held her against his chest. His weight was balanced behind her. His gun was in his right hand. She looked down the hall. A red light blinked above a narrow door. The panic room, 10 feet away. The man followed her gaze. "That is where we were taking you." His voice was close to her ear. "Sebastian built a beautiful cage. Shame he gave us the plans." Miles. The thought moved through Lila with sudden clarity. Miles had not only sold access, he had sold the location of every safe room lock and emergency system. The injured man limped closer. "Let me hit her." "No." "She put steel in my leg." "And Voss wants her face untouched." Lila looked at the panic room controls. A manual release switch sat behind a glass cover. If she could reach it, the steel door would open. If she could force the man close enough, the door itself could become a weapon. She let her body go still. The man holding her adjusted his grip. "Finally learned." Lila turned her head slightly. "Sebastian is going to kill you." The injured man smiled through pain. "He has to find us first." Lila looked directly at the red light. "He already has." Both men glanced toward the stairs. Lila drove her heel down onto the second man's foot and threw her weight forward. His grip slipped. She lunged toward the panic room and slammed her palm against the glass cover. It shattered. Her fingers found the switch. The steel door opened outward with sudden force. It struck the man behind her across the forearm. His gun fell. Lila kicked it down the hall. The injured man reached for her. She caught the edge of the door and pulled with all her strength. Steel slammed against his wounded leg. He collapsed with a scream. Lila grabbed the second man by the wrist and used the door to pin his arm against the frame. Bone cracked. His face twisted. She released the door and ran. A third intruder stepped from the rear staircase. He seized her before she reached the main landing. His hand closed around the back of her neck, the muzzle of a gun pressed against her ribs. "Enough!" His voice was calm. Unlike the others, he did not sound angry. That frightened her more. He pulled her backward. Lila saw the first two men struggling near the panic room. One held his broken arm. The other tried to drag himself away from the steel door. The third man tightened his grip. "You have made this inconvenient." Lila stared down the main staircase. The lower floor was almost completely dark. Water began falling from the ceiling. The fire suppression system had activated after the gunshots. A cold spray filled the hallway, turning the red emergency lights into a blurred haze. The man dragged her toward the rear stairs. "Move!" Lila planted her feet. He pressed the gun harder against her side. "I will shoot you somewhere survivable." "That sounds difficult to guarantee." "I have done it before." A voice rose from below. "Take your hand off her." The man behind Lila froze. Sebastian stood at the bottom of the staircase. Water ran from his dark coat. His hair was wet, his face pale beneath the emergency lights. Grant stood several feet behind him with a gun raised. Two security men moved through the lower hall. Sebastian's eyes were fixed on the hand at Lila's neck. The intruder pulled her closer. "Drop the weapon." Sebastian lifted his empty hands. Grant did not lower his gun. The intruder pressed the muzzle against Lila's ribs. "I said drop it." Sebastian looked at Grant. "Do it." Grant's jaw tightened. He placed the gun on the floor. The man behind Lila began moving toward the rear stairwell. Sebastian stepped onto the first stair. "Stay where you are." He stopped. Lila could see the violence inside him. It was not wild. It was concentrated. Every part of him seemed to have narrowed around the space where the gun touched her body. The intruder continued backward. "Voss sends his regards." Sebastian's voice remained quiet. "Voss sends other men because he's afraid to stand in front of me." The man smiled. "Perhaps he is simply smarter." Lila watched Sebastian. His eyes moved once toward her right hand, then toward the railing. A small signal, barely visible. She understood. The intruder reached the rear landing. Grant shifted his weight. One of the guards moved through the lower shadows. Sebastian spoke again. "Lila." The man tightened his hold. "Do not talk to her." Sebastian ignored him. "Close your eyes." She did not ask why. Lila let her body collapse. Her full weight dropped suddenly. The intruder's grip slipped as he tried to keep her upright. A shot exploded through the house. Lila hit the floor. The hand at her neck disappeared. She opened her eyes. The intruder staggered against the wall, blood spreading across his shoulder. Grant had retrieved his weapon. Sebastian was already moving. He reached the landing in seconds and struck the man hard enough to drive him into the banister. The gun fell between the rails and clattered onto the floor below. The intruder tried to reach for a knife. Sebastian caught his wrist and twisted. The knife dropped. Then Sebastian hit him again, and again. The man collapsed, but Sebastian did not stop. "Sebastian." Lila's voice vanished beneath the sound of water and impact. She pushed herself up. "Sebastian." He raised his fist again. Lila caught his arm. He turned so quickly that for one terrifying second he did not recognize her. Then his eyes cleared. She stood in front of him, soaked and shaking. "I am here." His breathing was harsh. He looked at her face, her arms, her throat. "Did he hurt you?" "No." "Did anyone touch you?" "I am all right." His hand moved to the back of her neck. He pulled her against him. The embrace was almost painful. Lila pressed her face into his chest and heard his heart beating hard beneath the wet fabric. Around them, Grant issued orders. Security men moved down the corridor. Nora called from behind the steel dressing room door. Lila closed her eyes. Sebastian held her as if the house were still falling apart. Then a sound came from the library. The injured man had dragged himself into the hall. His hand held a small pistol taken from beneath his coat. Grant saw him first. "Sebastian!" Sebastian turned. The gun fired. His body jerked against Lila. For one stunned second, no one moved. Then Sebastian stepped between her and the shooter. A second shot struck the wall. Grant fired. The injured man collapsed. Sebastian remained standing. Lila felt warmth spread across her hands. She looked down. Blood darkened the side of his shirt. "Sebastian!" His knees gave way. Lila caught him badly, lowering him against the wall as Grant reached them. "Medical room!" Grant shouted. Sebastian gripped Lila's wrist. His face had lost its color. "Are you hurt?" She stared at him. "You were shot. Answer me." "No, I am not hurt." His eyes closed for a second. Grant pressed both hands against the wound. The bullet entered below the ribs. Sebastian opened his eyes again. "Lila." "I am here." She knelt beside him, one hand against his face. Water ran down his hair and across his skin. Blood soaked through Grant's fingers. Sebastian looked at her as if the men around them had disappeared. "I spent a year trying not to love you." Her throat closed. "Do not talk. I thought distance would keep you alive. You can explain when you are standing." His hand lifted weakly. Lila caught it and pressed it against her cheek. His thumb moved once. "I love you." The words were quiet. No command, no possession, only truth. Lila bent closer. "I love you too." His eyes held hers. She forced strength into her voice. "So you are not dying on this floor." Grant and two guards lifted Sebastian onto a medical stretcher. Lila followed them down the service stairs. The hidden medical room sat behind the library wall on the lower level. Bright white lights filled the space. A doctor arrived through the private entrance before they finished cutting Sebastian's shirt away. Lila stood near the door with blood on her hands. The doctor examined the wound. The bullet passed through. Grant released a breath. "Is that good?" "It missed the liver. I need to control the bleeding." Sebastian remained conscious while they prepared the instruments. His gaze searched the room until it found Lila. She stepped closer. The doctor looked at her. "You cannot remain beside him." Sebastian spoke through clenched teeth. "She stays." The doctor did not argue. Lila took Sebastian's hand. The doctor injected a local anesthetic, cleaned the wound, and began working. Sebastian's grip tightened around her fingers. He did not make a sound. Lila watched his face instead of the blood. Every few seconds his eyes opened and found hers. She kept speaking. Not about the attack, not about Voss. She told him about the bakery beneath her apartment and the way the smell of bread woke her before her alarm. She told him her mother hated hospital food and smuggled salt packets into every appointment. She told him she had once failed a driving test because she stopped too long at every intersection. Sebastian's mouth moved faintly. "You drive too carefully." "You have never seen me drive." "I have read the reports." Lila stared at him. "You had reports about my driving. Security assessment." "That is disturbing." "It was thorough." The doctor looked up. "Please avoid making him laugh." "I was not laughing," Sebastian said. His voice was weaker now. The doctor finished closing the wound and wrapped a bandage around Sebastian's side. "He has lost blood, but the bullet missed anything critical. He needs rest and observation." Sebastian tried to sit. The doctor placed a hand against his shoulder. Rest means remaining horizontal. Grant. Grant stepped closer. We have all 3 intruders. 1 is dead. 2 are alive. Sebastian's eyes turned cold. Names? Not yet. Then find them. The doctor adjusted the line in Sebastian's arm. You may command Boston after I leave. For the next hour, you remain still. Grant looked away, perhaps to hide his reaction. Lila stood beside the bed. Sebastian looked at her. Where is Nora? Safe. Shaken, but safe. The guards. One has a head injury. Another was shot in the shoulder. Both are alive. Sebastian closed his eyes briefly. Keen. Grant's expression hardened. Missing. Lila looked at him. When? His tracking device went dark 12 minutes before the attack. He knew the false meeting was a trap, she said. Grant nodded. He must have noticed the schedule was too clean. Sebastian opened his eyes. Find him before Voss does. Grant's phone rang. He answered and moved toward the door. Lila remained beside Sebastian until his breathing steadied. For the first time since the gunshot, the room became quiet. Sebastian looked at the blood dried across her sweater. You should change. So should you. Mine was cut apart. You deserved it. His mouth shifted. Lila sat in the chair beside the bed. You came back. The harbor site was empty. You knew. Grant received the silent signal. The main alarm failed. You used the manual line. I did not know whether it worked. It worked. Sebastian studied her face. You fought them. I slowed them down. You stabbed one. He was rude. A breath moved through Sebastian that almost became laughter. Pain stopped it. Lila reached for his hand. His fingers closed around hers. I left you here because I believed it was safe. It was safer than my apartment. That is not enough. No place is safe if someone inside sells the keys. His eyes sharpened. Miles will answer for that. Yes. The certainty in her voice made him look at her differently, not as someone injured by his world, as someone standing inside it with open eyes. Grant returned 2 hours later. Sebastian was awake. Lila had changed into dry clothes, but a faint line of blood remained beneath one fingernail. Grant placed a recorder on the table. The surviving attacker talked. Sebastian's expression became still. Who is he? Caleb Ross, former private military contractor. Voss hired him through a security firm in Rhode Island. And the other, local muscle, no direct access to Voss. Grant pressed the recorder. A man's strained voice filled the room. Keene gave us the plans, told us which guard worked which floor. Voss wanted the woman alive. Said Rourke would give up the eastern terminals before he let her disappear. Grant stopped the recording. Lila looked at Sebastian. He revealed nothing. Grant continued. Voss planned to hold her in a warehouse near Fall River. He wanted the harbor routes, the customs contacts, and 3 freight companies transferred through shell agreements. He wanted more than territory, Lila said. Both men looked at her. He wanted people to know Sebastian surrendered it. Grant nodded. The council has been watching the conflict. Several families are waiting to see whether Voss can force him to compromise. Sebastian pushed himself higher against the pillows. Then we end Voss tonight. The doctor, who had returned to check the bandage, looked at him. You can barely stand. I do not need to stand. Grant understood the order. I will arrange it. No, Lila said. The room went quiet. Sebastian turned toward her. Stay out of this. No. His gaze hardened. Voss sent armed men into my home. Yes. He put a gun against you. Yes. He does not see tomorrow. Lila stepped closer to the bed. If you kill him tonight, every person watching sees exactly what he wants them to see. Sebastian's voice lowered. And what is that? A wounded man reacting emotionally. Grant remained silent. Lila continued. Voss did not send those men because he thought he could win a gunfight. He sent them because he wanted proof that I control your decisions. You do not control them. Then stop giving him evidence that fear does. Sebastian stared at her. The doctor quietly collected his instruments and left. Grant closed the door. Lila placed the access records beside the recorder. We have Miles's payments. We have the restored vendor codes. We have the attacker's statement. We have proof that Voss violated a protected residence. Sebastian's jaw tightened. He tried to take you. I know. You are asking me to treat that like a business dispute. I am asking you to destroy him in a way that everyone understands. Grant looked at the records. She is right. Sebastian turned his head slowly. Grant continued before he could object. If Voss dies tonight, his allies call it retaliation. If we expose the payments, the attack, and the broken council rules his allies abandon him before anyone fires a shot. Lila pulled another file from the table. Miles used offshore transfers to hide the gambling payment. Those same accounts paid the security company that hired the attackers. Grant opened the file. You found this. I compared the vendor numbers while Sebastian was asleep. I was not asleep, Sebastian said. Lila ignored him. The account names are different, but the routing sequence is the same. Voss recycled the same financial channel. Grant scanned the pages. This connects him directly. Sebastian looked at Lila for a long moment. What do you want? She met his eyes. I want him stripped of the thing he values. His life. His power. Something almost approving moved through Sebastian's expression. Grant placed another folder on the table. The council is meeting tomorrow night. Sebastian looked at him. Why? Voss called it before the attack. He planned to announce control of the eastern terminals after you agreed to his terms. Lila understood. He expected to arrive with proof that Sebastian surrendered. Grant nodded. If Sebastian fails to appear, Voss will say the shooting weakened him. Sebastian pushed the blanket aside. Lila placed one hand against his chest. You are not standing. I will attend. Not tonight. It is tomorrow. You were shot 2 hours ago. And I remain inconveniently alive. She stared at him. Grant looked at the far wall. Sebastian caught her wrist gently. You believe I should defeat him publicly? Yes. Then I must be there. Lila looked at the bandage beneath his open shirt. You will reopen the wound. Then you can criticize me while the doctor closes it again. Despite everything, anger and relief collided inside her. You are impossible. So I have been told. Lila released him. I am going with you. The humor left his face. No. You do not get to place evidence I found in front of a room and pretend I do not exist. The council is not a board meeting. I know. It is filled with men who will look at you and calculate what harming you is worth. They already do that from a distance. Sebastian's voice became colder. You will not enter that room. Lila stepped nearer. You spent a year hiding me. Voss found me anyway. This is different. No, it is the same fear, wearing a better suit. His eyes flashed. Grant moved toward the door. Sebastian stopped him. Stay. Grant did. Lila continued. If you arrive alone, Voss tells everyone I am hidden because you are ashamed of your weakness. You are not my weakness. Then let them see that. The words remained between them. Sebastian looked at her as though the argument had opened a door he did not want to enter. Lila lowered her voice. You told me you loved me. I do. Then do not love me like something you have to lock away. His expression changed. The anger remained, but it no longer controlled the room. What are you asking for? a choice. He watched her. Lila touched the locket at her throat, then let her hand fall. I choose to stand beside you. I choose to help expose Voss. I choose to enter the room knowing exactly what those men are. And if I refuse, then you are not protecting me. You are using fear to own me. Sebastian looked away. Grant said nothing. The silence lasted long enough for Lila to hear the faint hum of the medical equipment. Finally, Sebastian spoke. You remain beside me. Lila held his gaze. I stand beside you. His mouth tightened, then he nodded. Grant released a slow breath. I will arrange security. Sebastian looked at him. Double it. Lila opened her mouth. Sebastian raised one hand. That condition is not open for discussion. She almost smiled. Fine. The following day passed in measured preparation. Sebastian remained in bed through the morning, though he conducted calls as if the medical room were another office. Grant moved between the residence and the tower. Nora supervised repairs while avoiding the blood-stained section of carpet near the staircase. Lila worked at a table beside Sebastian. She organized the evidence into a sequence that told one clear story. Miles restored an obsolete access category. Voss paid Miles through an offshore account. Miles supplied the residence plans. The same account paid the men who entered the house. Voss violated council rules, attacked a protected residence, and used civilians to seize business territory. The facts were stronger than anger. By evening, Sebastian could stand without assistance, though pain tightened his face when he buttoned his shirt. Lila watched from the bedroom doorway. You should wear something looser. No. The bandage is visible. Then fix it. She crossed the room and adjusted the fabric near his side. Her fingers brushed the edge of the dressing beneath his shirt. Sebastian looked down at her. You are shaking. I am angry. At me. At the bullet. His hand touched her cheek. It missed. Not by enough. He bent and kissed her forehead. Nora entered carrying a garment bag. The dress has arrived. Lila looked at it. I did not order a dress. Sebastian adjusted his cuff. I did. Her eyes narrowed. You agreed not to make decisions for me. I selected an option. You may reject it. Nora opened the bag. The dress was dark emerald, simple through the waist and elegant without appearing delicate. Lila touched the fabric. Sebastian watched her. Why green? It matches your eyes. She looked at him. He returned to his cuff as if he had said nothing unusual. An hour later, Lila entered the drawing room. Sebastian stood near the fireplace in a black suit. His face remained slightly pale, but no one who did not know him well would have recognized the pain beneath his posture. He turned. For a moment, the room lost its sound. Lila wore the emerald dress with her mother's gold locket resting at her throat. Her hair fell softly over one shoulder. Sebastian looked at her as if every argument he had ever made for distance had become impossible to defend. You should not look at me like that, she said. Why, we are already late. I own the car. That does not change time. It changes whether anyone complains. Lila stepped closer. His hand found hers. The gesture was careful because of the bandage beneath his jacket. Grant entered from the hall. The route is secure. Sebastian did not release Lila's hand. Cars. 3 in front, 2 behind. Another team already at the club. Lila looked at Sebastian. That sounds excessive. It is effective. She recognized her own earlier words and gave him a restrained smile. Sebastian lifted her hand to his mouth. His lips touched her knuckles. You remain beside me. Lila moved closer until their shoulders touched. I stand beside you. Together they walked through the open door and into the waiting car. The car moved through Boston beneath a sky the color of gunmetal. Snow drifted against the windows in thin white ribbons. Streetlights passed across Sebastian's face, revealing and hiding the strain beneath his composure. His hand remained around Lila's, warm and steady, despite the pain she knew he was carrying under his jacket. Neither of them spoke for the first several blocks. Grant sat across from them, reviewing messages on his phone. 2 armed vehicles traveled ahead. More followed behind. Every turn had been checked before they reached it. Lila watched the city through the tinted glass. The familiar streets felt altered now. Restaurants glowed behind fogged windows. Couples hurried beneath umbrellas. A woman stood at a bus stop holding a paper bag against her chest. None of them knew that beneath the North End, men who controlled freight routes, unions, contracts, and lives were gathering to decide whether Sebastian Rourke was still powerful enough to lead. Lila looked at him. His eyes were closed. Not sleeping. Preparing. "How bad is the pain?" she asked. His eyes opened. "Manageable." "That means bad." "It means manageable." Grant did not look up from his phone. The doctor said he should not be sitting upright this long. Sebastian turned his head. "I remember asking you to arrange security." "I did. I do not remember asking you to become a nurse." Grant finally looked up. Neither does the doctor. That is why she threatened to call every 10 minutes. Lila almost smiled. Sebastian's gaze moved toward her. The softness in his expression appeared for only a moment. Then the car slowed. Grant checked the street through the windshield. "We are here." The private club stood behind a narrow brick building on Hanover Street. It had no sign above the door and no windows at street level. A restaurant occupied the first floor, filled with ordinary diners who had no idea what existed beneath them. Grant stepped out first. Security moved into position along the sidewalk. Sebastian released Lila's hand only long enough to leave the car. Then he offered it again. She placed her fingers in his. The street smelled of snow, roasted garlic, and cold stone. People turned as they passed. Some recognized Sebastian. Others simply recognized power. He led her through a side entrance and down a narrow corridor lined with dark wood. A guard opened a steel door at the end. Stairs descended beneath the building. The sounds of the restaurant faded above them. At the bottom, another guard checked Grant's face, then stepped aside without asking for identification. The room beyond was long and low, supported by old brick arches. Amber lamps hung above a polished table large enough for 20 people. Men in dark suits filled the chairs. Some were old enough to remember Sebastian's father. Others had built their power through technology, finance, and political favors, rather than street violence. A few women sat among them, quiet and observant. Every conversation stopped when Sebastian entered. Lila felt the weight of the room settle over her. No one looked surprised to see that he was alive. They looked surprised to see her beside him. Sebastian did not slow. His hand rested lightly against the small of her back as they crossed the room. The gesture was protective but not possessive. It did not push her forward or hold her behind him. It placed her beside him. Declan Voss sat at the far end of the table. He was older than Sebastian, broad through the chest with silver hair and a face that might have seemed pleasant in another life. He wore a navy suit and a pale tie. His hands rested calmly on the table. Miles Keene sat 2 chairs away from him. Lila felt something cold move through her. Miles looked thinner than he had at the office. His eyes shifted toward the exits before returning to Sebastian. Voss smiled. "Sebastian." Sebastian stopped behind an empty chair. "Declan." Voss looked at Lila. "So the rumors were true." Sebastian pulled out the chair for her. "The rumors underestimated her." Lila sat. Sebastian took the chair beside her. Grant remained standing behind them. Voss glanced toward Sebastian's side, perhaps searching for evidence of the bullet beneath his jacket. Most men take time to recover after being shot. Most men require it. A few people around the table exchanged looks. Voss smiled again. You always did enjoy theater. Sebastian rested one hand on the table. You called this meeting. I did. Then speak. The smile faded slightly. Voss looked around the room. For years, the Rourke organization has controlled the Eastern Harbor through agreements that no longer serve the city. Independent companies are pressured. Routes are restricted. Opportunities are distributed according to one man's approval. Sebastian remained silent. Voss continued. Several of us believed the time had come for a change. An older man near the center of the table folded his hands. You said you had terms. I do. Voss turned his attention back to Sebastian. Transfer the eastern terminals to a neutral management group. Release the customs agreements. Divide the freight contracts among the council. Sebastian's voice remained calm. And who controls this neutral group? Voss leaned back. That can be discussed. It already has been. Voss's expression tightened. Sebastian looked toward Miles. Hasn't it? Miles went still. Voss tapped one finger against the table. This meeting is about the harbor. No, Lila said. It is about what you did to obtain it. The room shifted toward her. Voss looked amused. And you are Lila Monroe. I know your name. Then you know I worked in executive operations at Rourke Atlantic. Worked. Her gaze held his. I still do. Voss looked at Sebastian. You brought an assistant to a council meeting. Sebastian's voice cooled. I brought the woman who found your accounts. The amusement disappeared. Grant stepped forward and placed a folder in front of every person at the table. Paper moved beneath careful hands. Voss did not touch his copy. Lila opened the folder before her. The first section contains the access history from Rourke Atlantic Tower. 3 weeks ago, someone restored a retired vendor category and used it to create a false security credential. Miles stared at the table. Lila continued. The account was registered under East Line Mechanical, a company that never received approval to work inside the executive garage. Voss said nothing. The credential was used to enter the building and leave a photograph of me on Sebastian's desk. A woman across the table looked up. You have proof the credential came from Voss. Not directly. Voss smiled faintly. Lila turned a page. It came from Miles Keene. Every eye moved toward him. Miles shifted in his chair. That is a lie. Lila looked at him. The code was created from your administrative account at 9:14 in the evening on January 8th. I was not in the building. You did not need to be. You accessed the system remotely through a corporate device. Miles looked toward Voss. The movement was small. It was enough. Lila continued. 7 days later, $200,000 was transferred into an account controlled by Halden Advisory. That account paid your gambling debt. Miles sat forward. My personal finances are not relevant. They became relevant when the same routing channel paid the company that hired the men who entered Sebastian's home. Murmurs moved around the table. Voss's face remained calm, but his hands no longer rested loosely. Lila opened another section. The men were hired through North Coast Protective Services in Rhode Island. The company is registered under a shell corporation owned by a holding group connected to Voss Freight. Voss looked around the room. Connected is not controlled. Grant placed a small recorder on the table. We also have testimony. He pressed a button. The attacker's voice filled the room. Keene gave us the plans. Voss wanted the woman alive, said Rourke would give up the eastern terminals before he let her disappear. Grant stopped the recording. Silence followed. Voss looked toward Miles. Miles's face had gone pale. "This proves nothing," Voss said. "A frightened contractor will say anything after Grant Maddox spends an hour with him." Grant's expression did not change. "He spent 20 minutes with a doctor." Voss looked back at Sebastian. "You expect this council to accept a recording made under your roof?" Sebastian leaned slightly forward. The movement pulled against his wound. Lila saw the tension cross his face, though no one else seemed to notice. "You violated my home," he said. Voss's gaze sharpened. "You have no proof I gave that order." Lila slid one final page from the folder. "The payment to North Coast Protective Services was authorized by a digital certificate belonging to Voss Maritime Holdings." Voss looked at the paper for the first time. Lila continued. "The signature was hidden behind a temporary subsidiary, but the certificate number remained attached to the transaction." The older man near the center read the document twice. "That is careless." Lila looked at Voss. "No, it was arrogant." His eyes settled on her. The warmth disappeared from his face. "You speak with confidence for someone who survived because men arrived in time." Lila felt Sebastian become still beside her. She did not look at him. "I survived because your men underestimated me." Voss's mouth hardened. "You believe stabbing a hired guard makes you dangerous." "No." She folded her hands on the table. "I believe understanding your system makes you vulnerable." Sebastian's gaze moved toward her. Pride warmed the space between them. Voss looked around the room. "This woman has no standing here." A woman seated near the far wall spoke. "Neither did your gunman." Voss turned. She continued. "You sent armed men into a protected residence. That agreement is older than any harbor contract." Another man nodded. "Families remain outside business." Voss's voice sharpened. "She is not family." Sebastian stood. The room fell silent. Pain tightened beneath his expression, but his posture did not change. He placed one hand against the table. "Lila Monroe is under the protection of the Rourke organization." Lila looked up at him. The words were powerful, but they belonged to the language of possession and territory. Sebastian looked down at her. Something passed between them. He understood. His eyes returned to the council. "No," he said. Voss frowned. Sebastian continued. "That is incomplete." He straightened. "Lila Monroe has earned the loyalty of the Rourke organization. She identified the breach in our security. She preserved evidence during an attack. She exposed the man who sold access to my home." His gaze moved around the table. "Any threat against her is not an attack on something I own. It is an attack on someone who stands beside me." Lila felt her throat tighten. Sebastian looked at Voss. "You mistook love for weakness because you have never understood loyalty." Voss rose from his chair. "You abandoned the harbor for her. I abandoned an empty warehouse. You turned your convoy around." "Yes." The room waited. Voss spread his hands. "Then every person here sees the truth. One woman speaks, and Sebastian Rourke changes direction." Sebastian's expression remained calm. "Lila does not control me." He looked at her. "She reminds me when fear does." Voss stared. Sebastian turned back to the council. "Declan expected me to surrender territory because he believed I would value her life more than the harbor." "You would," Voss said. "Yes." The answer landed without hesitation. Several people shifted. Sebastian continued. "That is why he believed the plan would work. What he failed to understand is that Lila would never ask me to trade fear for obedience." He rested one hand on the folder. She found a better answer. Grant moved to the wall and activated a screen. Bank transfers, company records, and freight documents appeared. Sebastian spoke. Copies of these records were sent to federal investigators 40 minutes ago. For the first time, Voss lost control. His head turned toward Miles. Miles stood abruptly. You said the accounts were clean. Every eye moved toward him. Voss's face became cold. Sit down. Miles looked toward the door. Grant stepped into his path. Miles stopped. Sebastian continued. The customs violations are documented. The bribery accounts are documented. The shell companies are documented. He looked at Voss. By morning, your legitimate businesses will be frozen. Your shipping insurance will be suspended. Your financial partners will be questioned. Voss stared at him. You brought federal agents into our business. No, you did when you used corporate accounts to finance an abduction. The older man near the center closed the folder. Our agreement does not protect stupidity. Voss looked around the table. Do not pretend any of you are clean. No one said we were, the woman near the wall replied. We said you broke the rules. Another council member pushed Voss's folder back across the table. My contracts are withdrawn. A second man spoke. So are mine. One by one, the room turned away from him. Not dramatically. No shouting, no threats. Only decisions. A freight agreement canceled. A warehouse denied. A union contact withdrawn. A security partnership ended. Voss watched his power disappear through quiet sentences. Miles backed toward Grant. I can testify. Voss looked at him with disgust. You already did. Miles's breathing quickened. I have records, private meetings, names. Grant took his arm. You can discuss them somewhere safer. Miles looked at Sebastian. Please. Sebastian's face revealed nothing. You sold her address. I needed the money. You sold my home. I did not know they would attack. Lila looked at him. You downloaded the security plans. Miles turned toward her. I thought they wanted leverage. They brought guns. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. Lila remembered the man pressing a weapon against her ribs. Nora trapped behind steel. Sebastian's blood on her hands. Intent does not erase a door you chose to open. Grant led Miles from the room. No one tried to stop him. Voss remained standing. His allies were no longer looking at him. Sebastian faced him across the table. You asked for the harbor. Voss's eyes narrowed. Sebastian's voice lowered. You will leave Boston without it. You think paperwork destroys men like me? No. Sebastian glanced at Lila. She does. Voss looked at her. For the first time, she saw something close to fear. Not fear of violence, fear of being understood. He buttoned his jacket. This is not finished. Sebastian's expression became cold enough to silence the room. It is finished because no one here will answer your calls tomorrow. Voss looked around the table. No one contradicted him. He walked toward the exit alone. The steel door closed behind him. For several seconds, the room remained silent. Then the woman near the wall raised her glass toward Lila. Director Monroe. Lila blinked. Sebastian looked at her. The title had not yet been made official. The woman smiled. That is where this is going, isn't it? Lila looked at Sebastian. He answered without hesitation. Yes. The council meeting ended within 20 minutes. Agreements were revised. Routes were reassigned temporarily. Voss's access to the eastern terminals was suspended by unanimous decision. Sebastian signed nothing until Lila read every page. No one questioned why. When they returned to the street, snow had thickened. The city was quieter now. White gathered on parked cars and iron railings. The convoy waited beneath the streetlights. Sebastian stopped beside the car. Lila looked at him. You need to sit down. I have been sitting for 2 hours. You are also bleeding beneath a very expensive suit. His mouth shifted. Was it obvious? Only to me. He touched her cheek. That is becoming a pattern. Lila looked toward the falling snow. Voss is still alive. Yes. Do you believe he will leave? No. She turned back. Then this is not over. The part involving you is. You cannot promise that. I can promise he no longer has allies' money or access. That is not the same as safety. No. Sebastian's thumb moved across her cheek. Safety is rarely permanent. The honesty settled between them. He opened the car door. I can move you outside Massachusetts until the investigation ends. Lila stared at him. After everything in that room, you are still trying to send me away? I am offering. You are terrible at offering. I am learning. She stepped closer. My life is here. Your apartment is compromised. I am not talking about my apartment. Sebastian became still. Lila looked at him through the snow. I will stay at the Beacon Hill house until the threat is contained. His eyes darkened with something he did not try to hide. But I am not staying as a secret. No. And I am not returning to a desk outside your office. No. I want the strategic operations position. It is yours. I want authority over the department. Granted. I want my salary reviewed. A faint smile appeared. You negotiate after midnight in the snow. I learned from watching you. Sebastian stepped closer until the open car door sheltered them from the street. And what do I receive? Lila looked into the face of the man she had loved when he refused to see her. The man who had bled on the floor for her. The man who had finally stood before his world and named her without claiming ownership. A woman who chooses you after seeing everything. His expression changed. Obedience had never been difficult for Sebastian to obtain. Choice was different. Choice had to be earned. He bent and kissed her. The kiss was slow despite the cold. His hand settled at her waist while snow touched her hair and melted against her skin. When they separated, his forehead rested against hers. I love you, he said. No fear hid beneath the words now. Lila touched the edge of his jaw. I know. His eyebrow lifted. She smiled. I love you too. 3 weeks later, Lila returned to Rourke Atlantic Tower. The winter sun reflected off the harbor and filled the executive floor with pale light. Employees looked up as she stepped from the elevator. The attention felt different from the morning her desk disappeared. Then they had watched because Sebastian had moved her. Now they watched because everyone knew what she had done. Her new office stood beside the Strategic Operations Department. The glass door carried her name. Lila Monroe, Director of Strategic Operations. She stopped in front of it. For a moment she could not move. Years of quiet work had been reduced to invisible labor. Problems disappeared before anyone saw them. Meetings succeeded, contracts closed, and executives moved through their days believing order happened naturally. Now her name stood on the glass. Not because Sebastian loved her, because she had earned the position long before he admitted what he saw. A familiar voice came from behind her. Looks good. Lila turned. Ethan stood near the security desk holding a paper cup. His expression was warm, though something careful remained behind it. It does, she said. He approached and handed her the coffee. Vanilla latte, extra cinnamon. For tradition. She accepted it. Thank you. Ethan looked toward Sebastian's office. The door was closed. I heard things. I am sure everyone did. Most versions involve gunfire federal agents and you humiliating a room full of dangerous men. Only parts of that are exaggerated. He smiled, then his expression became serious. You are okay. Lila considered the question. I am. He treats you well. She looked through the glass toward Sebastian's door. He is learning. Ethan nodded. Good. A quiet pause passed between them. Lila held the coffee with both hands. You were kind to me when I needed it. I brought you caffeine. You noticed me. Ethan looked down briefly. I would have liked the chance to do more. I know. He met her eyes. The hurt was still there, but it no longer asked for anything. Then I suppose making you laugh was my greatest professional achievement. Lila smiled. It nearly started a war. That part was not in the security training. They both laughed. The sound carried across the executive floor. Sebastian's office door opened. He stepped into the corridor. His eyes found Lila immediately. Then they moved to Ethan. Ethan raised both hands. It is only coffee. Sebastian approached. His expression remained serious. Extra cinnamon? Ethan looked surprised. Yes. Sebastian took the cup from Lila, examined the label, then returned it. I approve. Lila stared at him. Ethan laughed. That may be the most terrifying blessing I ever receive. He nodded to Lila. Congratulations, Director Monroe. Thank you. Ethan returned to the elevator. The doors closed behind him. Sebastian looked at the coffee. You accepted a drink from him. It was a gift. I dislike it. You are learning the difference between disliking something and owning it. His eyes narrowed. I remember. Lila opened her office door. Sebastian followed her inside without asking. She placed the coffee on the desk. You require an appointment. I own the company. And I control your schedule. His gaze moved toward the title on the glass. That sounds dangerously close to power. I learned from an expert. Sebastian closed the door. The office was smaller than his, but it belonged to her. Her management books lined one shelf. Her mother's photograph stood beside the brass lamp. The little plant from her old desk sat near the window. Sebastian placed another cup beside Ethan's. Lila looked at it. Vanilla latte, extra cinnamon. She raised her eyes. You brought me coffee. I did. You remembered. I always remembered. The answer softened her. She stepped around the desk. For a year you walked past me. I know. You knew how I took my coffee. Yes. You knew about my mother, my classes, and my headaches. Yes. And you still never stopped. His expression changed. I stopped every day. Lila went quiet. Sebastian looked through the glass toward the space where her old desk had once stood. I simply did it after I passed you where you could not see. She studied him. That was foolish. Extremely. And cowardly. Painfully. Lila touched the front of his tie. You are becoming easier to train. His hand settled at her waist. Do not become overconfident. She smiled. Sebastian watched the smile with the same intensity that had opened his office door weeks earlier. Only now there was no Ethan beside her. No silent floor waiting for anger. No closed door between them. Later that evening, they stood together beside the windows in Sebastian's office. Boston Harbor turned dark beneath the winter sky. Lights moved along the water. Snow began falling again, soft and slow against the glass. Lila rested against him. His arm circled her waist. A year, he said. She looked up. What about it? You were 10 feet from me for an entire year, and you never saw me. Sebastian's gaze held hers. No. Lila raised an eyebrow. He touched her face. I saw you. The words were quiet. I was terrified of what would happen when I let myself look. She leaned into his hand. And what happened? I lost control of my office. True. I was shot. Also true. My oldest enemy lost his empire. That was mostly paperwork. His mouth curved, and the woman outside my door became the most powerful person in my building. Lila looked through the glass toward her name on the office across the floor. No. Sebastian waited. She turned back to him. She finally stopped waiting for someone else to tell her she mattered. Pride moved through his expression. He bent and kissed her as snow drifted over the harbor. For most of her life, Lila had believed being loved meant becoming impossible to ignore. She understood now that love was not the gaze of a powerful man. It was the freedom to remain fully visible when that gaze found her. Sebastian held her closer. Outside Boston moved beneath them, restless and bright. Inside, there was no distance left to hide behind. For the first time in her life, Lila Monroe was not the woman people looked through. She was the woman Sebastian Rourke could never look away from.